here we have some of the actual seeds. Guten Yardening, everybody! Well, it is nearly the middle of October and our asparagus seed pods are turning a bright orange. And that means it's time to harvest them to collect some of those asparagus seeds. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about how our asparagus plant grows and what you can do to grow your own asparagus at home. Now, I am just over 6 feet tall, and this tallest piece of asparagus is actually taller than I am by a good foot. So we've got about 7 feet tall asparagus in here. You can actually see some of it folding over under the weight. But this is one of the things that you can expect to have happen when you let your asparagus go to seed like we have. Now, this is our 4th year growing this asparagus, and it is really taken off this year. We got lots of great asparagus from our harvest early on, but we wanted to let it go to seed just so we could show you what it's like growing this asparagus and what it means when you start seeing these little orangish red balls on here. These are our seeds. These are actually what contain the seeds for our asparagus. So if you let them grow up fully, eventually they'll start to create these. Now, these are green at first, but as they mature, they turn this nice shade of orange. Now, asparagus is actually part of the lily family, but the berries that they grow when they've gone to seed, and you can see we actually have quite a few more down in here, well, they contain something called sapogenins. And just a handful of these will cause you to be, well, quite sick. But here we have some of the actual seeds inside. So one berry here contained 3 asparagus seeds. Now, there is absolutely no problem with growing your asparagus from seed and getting it started. And quite frankly, we've had a lot of luck with just a corner of our garden. There is nothing special about the soil here. In fact, the native soil that we have is primarily a clayey soil, and we have added some compost over the years to improve it, but this area really isn't anything special. So when it comes to growing your asparagus, we try to find a reasonably well-draining soil, but realistically, once you get this vegetable started, it is quite hardy. Now, hopefully you can see a lot of the canes in here, some really nice size to them, and granted, they'd be very woody at this point because they've been growing like this for, I would say, a month and a half, maybe 2 months since we've last come out here and harvested anything. But this is a plant that will provide you with asparagus for up to 20 years. In fact, when we got this plant, it was actually given to us for free by one of our local organic producers. They're the ones that we have in the past bought a lot of our seedlings from. And they gave it to us because they had never tried selling it before and they wanted to see how it would do. So it was sort of a test run. Well, when the seeds start to form, those first plants actually look quite fragile. Now, what I'm showing you is the top of our asparagus that's gone to seed. And the reason I'm showing you this is this is reminiscent of what that seed looks like once it starts sprouting. It's very flimsy. It's actually even flimsier than this. It's kind of a feathery texture to it, doesn't it? It looks like kind of a feathery feel. But after a single year, we were getting pieces of asparagus that much more resembled this thickness here at the top of this piece of asparagus. Now, by year 2, we actually did come out and we harvested a couple of pieces. Now, we harvested those knowing that it really wasn't yet time for the plant to be ready. It wasn't really fully mature. For that, we're waiting for about year 3 or maybe even year 4. But the ones we had were really tasty. We didn't overdo it, and we still let that go to seed as well. Now, we did a YouTube short a couple of months ago where we showed you what it looked like when the plant was mature to see it developing out of the ground. And I think we gave some pretty good information in that video about things that you'd want to look for and what that process looks like. But one thing I can say is I've read that a lot of companies are actually kind of rushing that experience to try to get some of their harvest in year 2. And what that's creating is some of those smaller or thinner asparagus. And I know a lot of people think about that as gourmet, but actually the thicker asparagus is tender or more tender than the thinner asparagus just in general. And so once you get to that year 3 or year 4 like we are, you should start to see some of that really nice, thick 3/8 of an inch, 1/2 inch asparagus coming up. Now, one of the things we're going to do, because we have that mature plant, and we know that that mature plant, because we're going to take care of it, should last us another 14 or 15 years, we're going to prep seeds from the asparagus. We're going to save those seeds, and we're going to take those seeds and we're going to plant elsewhere so that we don't ever have a 3 to 4 year gap in planting. Now, granted, I think the planning for this is a lot easier than the planning for some of the other vegetables because we have plenty of time to plan that out. But we want to make sure that we're always consistently developing asparagus because we really enjoy the taste. Now, a couple of pieces of advice when it comes to harvesting your berries for seed. First of all, these are toxic, as I mentioned earlier, and if you are someone prone to issues with dermatitis, for example, you might want to be careful. You might want to wear gloves because it is possible that that could impact your skin. Another thing is that you never really know exactly how many seeds are going to be in each one of these berries. This one, for example, has 6 seeds, it looks like. And this one, right next door, it's growing right next door here, has, looks like 3 seeds there. So, we have a different set of seeds for each one. What you can do is just remove the frond where these seeds are located. So you don't actually have to pull the seeds off like I have. You could just cut off the area that has the seeds, put it in a bag, let it dry out, and eventually they would fall off. But the way I'm planning to do this is a little different. I'm just going to open these up. I'm going to collect the seeds now. I'm going to set them out on a paper towel and just let them dry out completely. Now, another thing to note about these seeds is that the reason I'm harvesting them now is because I actually plan to grow asparagus from seed. It is definitely possible to grow asparagus from crowns, although I'm not talking about that method right now because our primary focus is on the seeds that appear here in the fall. This is the time to go out and gather them up before everything turns yellow and you cut the plant down. Now, if you do grow from seeds, the best bet there is to go ahead and get them started indoors, and we're going to do that over the winter. Or if you have a cold frame, get them started in a pot. It's just a little bit better. You can determine the germination rate a little bit more easily. And one other thing, when these have dried out and when you are ready to go ahead and start growing from these seeds, one of the things that's recommended is that you soak these seeds for a couple of days in water, for about 3 days in water, changing the water regularly before you plant them. That just tends to help speed the process up a little bit more. Well, there are a couple of things I'm noticing as I'm handling this seed. First of all, you can see the size of this seed. It's a nice dark black color. You can see the size, and you can see that the berry itself has left a lot of orange sticky residue on my hand. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but if you're someone prone to dermatitis, remember what I have here from the berry is somewhat toxic, and so it could actually cause a reaction. Fortunately, I don't seem to have that problem with these berries. Now, I've mentioned cutting this back a couple of times. Well, one of the things you can probably see here, and this is a really good example, this stem right here has turned yellow. See all of the yellow in there? Once this entire area here has turned yellow, that's when I'm going to go ahead, come in here, and I'm going to cut this down all the way to the ground. Depending on how much you have growing, whatever's easiest for you to find a way to get this cut back, I'm planning to come out here with clippers and I'm going to cut all this down. Now, usually that change in color is going to happen after the first frost. And I don't know how long we have until that first frost. I'd say we have another couple of weeks at least. So this is something that's going to be cut back late in the fall, well after I've come through and I've harvested all these berries. Now, one other thing to be advised about them, when I talk about the fact that they last a long time, these berries, once they ripen up, they will start to fall onto the ground. And if they do that, well, you have a definite vigorous self-seeder on your hands. So a lot of times when people see these form and they turn this reddish orange color, that's what you're looking for to make sure they've matured. They come out and they cut those off before they have a chance to fall to the ground. The one thing you have to be careful about when it comes to growing asparagus is remembering just how quickly they grow, just how many inches they can put on in any given day, because if you let them go too long, well, you're not going to enjoy the taste. And so staying on top of the harvest is probably the hardest part. Now, a couple of other things to know about these seeds once you've harvested them. You want to store them in a low humidity, cool place. That's just typical of most seeds. And the shelf life for something like this should be about 3 to 4 years. However, from our reading and research, the suggestion is that you try to plant these the following year after harvest in order to get the best germination results. Now remember, if you're growing from seeds like this, which we plan to do, it may take another year. But if you get this started and you're already in that cycle where you have some that's maturing, maybe it's year 2, maybe it's year 3, and you're starting to get seeds, it makes sense to get the next batch started so that you're never without asparagus. Well, we hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. And if you did, please go ahead and give us a like, leave us a comment, let us know your experience growing asparagus, and don't forget to share and subscribe. And most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.